Welcome back, guys, to Horses of Courses. I'm Tinia.
I'm Suzanna.
And this is episode 3. We are podcasting from Morgan Marrese's house in Munfordville, Kentucky.
Oh my gosh, she said it right. Usually she says mum. I'm like, it's not 2 M's.
So we were traveling. I happened to be traveling back this way, and Suzanna was able to meet me. So we actually just sent my husband off with Morgan to do a trail ride.
He's going to ride his first Mustang ever.
Woo!
Woohoo!
So let's give him well wishes and hopes and dreams that he returns. We are going to talk to you guys today about the upcoming Equine Affaire in Ohio.
And try not to make funny faces on the video.
Yeah, so we're recording this for the first time with video, and that...
I'm not good at not making funny faces.
Well, listen, we did try to record it the last time on video, and I was horrified.
She made funny faces too.
I didn't use that. I couldn't. I cut that, and that was, well, Susanna's like, what about the video? And I was like, we don't talk about that.
Which is fine with me. I don't like being on video anyway.
She's going to have to get used to it, though. So Equine Affaire is something Susanna's never been at all.
I have been, yes.
But not with Heart of Phoenix. Yeah. So we set up there. Every year, the Right Horse Initiative with the ASPCA does an adoption barn event. And even though Suzanna has not been there, she does know what a great adoption event it is, especially for young horses.
We could have gotten 10 more adopted last year.
So what we do is we try to take young horses that are ready to go, and then depending, like a horse that's just been sitting in the rescue a while that we find very adoptable and for whatever reason just hasn't had enough exposure. And honestly, we don't know exactly who's going to make it until we are about a week out from the event. Things can change. But right now, we expect to have
Dorian,
Moto, Alba,
and Anthem.
And Anthem. So if you attend that event, then look for us in the adoption barn. There's a lot of signage that will be up. I think 50,000 or more people attend the event. It's one of the biggest events of any kind in Ohio, and I think potentially the largest attended equine event in the country.
It's pretty nifty. There's a lot for everybody, not just the rescues having their horses there, but there's like demonstrations and liberty shows and clinicians. There's just so much stuff.
Well, and this year, first time for both of them that have Adam Black and Randy McStoops are both competing in horse and rider versatility at Equine Affaire.
Against each other?
They'll be against each other.
Ooh, boy.
And usually Brenda Hansen, who has done the ATFO many times, usually she's in there and has won it many times.
Yeah, she can't make it this year, though.
So that's going to be exciting. I don't usually leave the booth area to go watch a whole lot, but that's something I have each year that Brenda has competed. I've liked to watch, and then this year I will be very excited to see Adam's riding his mule, Junie.
Just June.
Just June,
Yeah, her
not
name's
Junie.
just June.
I like to add an E to everything.
No, but
My
I mean,
kids,
her name is just June.
He doesn't call her Junie.
Well, I don't know, but that's her name.
Oh, well, I'm going to call her Junie. I don't know who Randy's going to be on, but that's exciting, too, to have people who have competed in the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off be there competing at what is a very difficult event.
Yes.
Have you seen the horse and rider versatility?
Mm-hmm. I have.
Have you seen it with Brenda, though?
No. I was pre-Brenda.
Okay.
We need to say thank you to the Right Horse for sponsoring our stalls, too, while we're there.
Yes, so the Right Horse Initiative with the ASPCA, they cover the costs of the stalls. We are still looking for sponsors for like stall material, like the bedding that we buy while we're there, and we try to buy the foam boards to put under so the horses aren't standing just on concrete. So we're still looking for some sponsors for the horses that are going up. I think we still need 2 sponsors. I think it's $75 per stall.
Remember.
And we're also looking for sponsors that would help us cover volunteer meals. So if you hear this and you're interested, the actual event is April 10th through 14th, and that's in Columbus, Ohio at the Ohio State Fairgrounds. I believe Carl Bledsoe is going to be there as a gated clinician, and Carl has been a judge for the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off.
We like him.
He's super cool. Really just an exemplary human being, I think, in the horse world. He just won the Humane Society of the United States Humane Horseman of the Year award for all his work to end soaring.
Well-deserved.
very deserved. He's worked so hard and lost a whole career that he had built when he was training in a way that he realized wasn't ethical or right, and walked away from that. And very few people would have left such a career and
We'll
then
have
worked.
him on here someday. Don't tell the whole story.
Well, we actually, John and I were just talking about it. We have the interview with Carl that John did last year at the ATFO.
There we go.
And also Keith Dane, who was with Humane Society of the United States, talking about how that went. And so if I can find that, I'd like to drop that as like a special episode. 2
years from now when she unearths it from the drawer.
Yeah, it'll be old news then. But so it's just an opportunity to connect with lots of people we already do know. I usually approach different clinicians about judging the ATFO. A lot of fun, but definitely stop and see us there and say hello. We also are happy to have volunteers step in for a couple hours, especially Saturday is a very busy day. So if you're available and you could volunteer a spot, we'd certainly like to have you. Moving on, we're going to talk about spring grass and the dangers it holds. That's more Susanna's thing.
Dum.
Yeah, I leave that mostly to Susanna. I'll interject a little bit, but
Because y'all don't have any grass at Mulligan anymore.
no.
Yeah. So, one of the misnomers is people who haven't had horses before, and sometimes even people who have had horses for quite a while, is I have horses, I have grass, life will be great. But the problem is that horses were really designed to eat the grass that grows out west, what we call native grass, and not Kentucky bluegrass or orchard grass or whatever it is, that, especially not fescue, that we plant and grow here. And so when spring gets going, the grass is under it's under stress, and the way that grass helps itself when it's under stress is it throws sugar at itself. Some people define that as fructans. There's a lot of controversy about whether to call it fructans, sugar. I don't really care. You just need to understand that that's bad for your horse. And it throws it at itself, trying to fix itself when it's under 6 inches. So during spring, in rapid growth, it's throwing all these fructans or sugars or whatever you want to call it. Your horses are really excited about that because it tastes like Hershey bars, and that's where you get into trouble.
I bet it wouldn't taste like Hershey bars to us.
Well, I haven't ever chewed on grass of you.
As a kid, I did. I didn't find it to be palatable.
Well, okay. Anyway, so the other problem that's going on is when grass is rapidly growing, there's some controversy about why this happens, but it causes a magnesium shortage in your horses, which is why people say when my horses eat spring grass, they're crazy, and they start throwing the mare magic at their mares, not thinking about the science behind why that's working. And then it cracks me up. I just told this story on the hot page the other day. Last year in a barn, I heard somebody talking about how just for kicks, they decided to give mare magic to their gelding, and whoa, it helped him too. I couldn't believe it. He's not even a mare. And I'm like laughing in the next stall because the magnesium helped the horse calm down. It was funny.
Well, and so I will mention this. We just received a laminitic horse. We haven't even posted about this horse yet on the Herd of Phoenix page, but this horse came in very actively painful, really long feet. Our vet is who recommended the horse be turned over to us, and I suspect that this is a horse who has belonged to someone who really didn't take the time necessarily to become educated as to what were the causes of this horse's pain. Understanding, yes, there's some laminitis there, and she has, likely previously foundered. But I think that so many times you see, and I hate to even say this, and because it'll hurt some feelings, but we'll get updates on adopted horses going into spring, and they're morbidly obese, and we know
it's terrorizing.
We know the setups the people have based on screening. And so, of course, we are concerned for the horse's welfare that people just well-meaning just leave these horses that are really prone. You can look at them and physically tell the horse is prone to a laminitic episode. And in all likelihood, if something goes poorly, we're, potentially getting this horse back now foundered. That really concerns me. So I just hope this without hurting feelings. But the truth is, if you have an obese horse, for one, there's lots of things going wrong, and it's in the winter, so it's not your spring grass causing it, but you're certainly setting your horse up for a disaster. Susanna deals with this with her own horses that are, you can look at them and see they're prone to obesity, and it's a lot of management. People say, oh, I want an easy keeper.
You don't want an easy keeper.
If you're knowledgeable about horses, you do not. You want a hard keeper.
Right.
You really do. You want a hard keeper. You want a horse with a metabolism that's not inclined to obesity. And honestly, the detriment done to a horse after a founder episode, or just even if they don't founder, but they're just grossly obese, and here the metabolism is wrecked, and you fight with that the rest of the horse's life. And if you get a horse morbidly obese at 3-4 years old, there's 30 years of continued management.
Yeah.
So tipping a horse over and kind of destroying that metabolism, and again, I'm always telling Suzanna, what's the science behind it? So I'm telling you, it's my opinion. There could be all kinds of articles I could link you to, but once you let a horse become obese, once it happens and you've done that, it is a fight forever. And honestly, you'll see this in dogs and cats and things too. You have destroyed, in my opinion, the metabolism of the animal, and you don't get to go backward,
No.
So,
I mean, I wish I could go backwards. I've never tipped mine over into laminitis, but I have a Morab and I have a Hoflinger cross. And so genetically, they're predisposed to this anyway, but then they both came from corn-fed diets. My Morab was an out west horse, so she was used to native grass, and here she is over here on Kentucky bluegrass and orchard grass. So
well, and talk about that. It's not even just the type of grass; it's the fact that we also are fertilizing it. Which,
not me.
Well, but people that are working on their pastures, they could be fertilizing the land, and they're trying to even make it richer, which wouldn't occur in a natural setting. And you could all argue that, well, we've overgrazed things and depleted soils, and we're just trying to restore it to its natural state. But in the truth, it never would have been as rich as we are potentially making the land. And horses were certainly never meant to just stand on a 5-acre field and eat enriched pasture.
Right. Yeah. No, so, I don't fertilize my fields. I do lime them because I have sage grass that grows in there. If you don't lime it, you can't get rid of the sage grass. But, I go through the testing with my county extension agent, and he determines how much needs to go on there. So I'm just not blindly throwing the lime at it either. So, and the other thing that's important to realize going into spring is a lot of people in the winter try to save money on farrier care by stretching out their trims. But if you let a horse go into spring with stretched white line, you're going to actually set your horse up to be more prone to the spring grass bothering it, because a stretched white line is your first weakness in your hoof. So you don't want to do that either.
Well, and we were just down we were in Georgia, Suzanna and I, at the University of Georgia, getting an equine welfare certification. We were super excited to get that. And one of the things they were talking about and stressed a lot was the fact that, you should be testing your soils. You should be testing your hay, understand what you need, and your extension agent, in theory, in your county should be able to help you with that. I take it a step further. They didn't really cover much on testing your horses, but we've pulled mineral panels on horses, and I've heard different things about that. I personally feel like the mineral panels we've seen are showing me what I expected to find. I've heard that potentially the mineral panels aren't super accurate for horses, but the ones we've pulled seem to line up with what I would expect.
Well, we pulled the one for Rita with Terry and got her turned around because we were able to interpret that. And we pulled the one for TikTok and got him turned around because we were able to interpret that. So you kind of have to know what you're looking for and which ones to pull.
Well, and so we have recently sent in some hay testing, but we're pairing that with our feed, the ADM feed, and knowing what that has. And then also the water. We just tested the water. We haven't gotten those results back yet. But anyway, so when you're thinking the springtime's probably a good time, I would imagine to look over the whole nutritional picture you've got. But don't be lazy about it and let a horse end up with a lifetime disability because you chose to just leave them out there on the grass.
Right, it frosted at my house this morning. It hasn't frosted for a couple of weeks, and I went and got my Morab and locked her up with the soaked hay.
Well, and explain why that is.
Because the frost is double stressing the grass, so then the fructans or the sugars or whatever you want to call it really goes berserk. So I pulled her off. She's in the dry lot with her soaked hay.
Well, and so the takeaway, and why do you soak hay?
I'm taking, well, for me, mainly I'm taking the iron out of it, but it also reduces a lot of the sugar that's stored in the hay. What you need to understand, though, is if you're feeding soaked hay, you're short on vitamin E. Or if you're feeding non-soaked hay, you're short on vitamin E. So that's a whole different episode that we'll probably cover sometime. But there's a lot of nuances to that.
Yeah. So anyway, my takeaway that I would hope you're walking away from this with is easy keepers.
Suck.
That is a misnomer. There's no such thing. It is hard work, and if you have that kind of horse, you do. But if you're going to have one of those horses, put the work in to keep the horse safe and doing well.
Yes.
Moving on, we have a product.
Dum dum dum.
So this product is it's just the Meprazole. So it's from Doc Lane's pharmacy. I will mention that depending on what people tell you, some vets and some equine folks don't like compounded medications. That's fine. That's up to you. We've used a lot of compounded medications. They're so much less expensive, and they do work in our experience. We've had zero issues. We were really happy to have an adopter tell us about this specific pharmacy in Lexington that compounds all sorts of medication. So this is a compounded omeprazole powder. And
apple flavored.
It seems very palatable. They do make this in a liquid, which the horses do seem to like, and they make it in a paste. Price-wise for shipping, the powder is probably the most economical, but the cost of this is about $128, and I think that's even including shipping. Mm-hmm. And compare that to over $1,000 for a commercial product. So we have found this to work. It's something that the reason I wanted to talk about it was I believe you shouldn't have horses if you can't afford horses. But there are a lot of people that can afford a horse that would struggle with a sudden $1,200, $1,500 bill for ulcer medication.
Right.
So this isn't, so what we don't want to happen is people to try to find things that don't work. There's all kinds of supplements sold over the counter, but the truth is the medication's what heals the ulcers. So a lot of people will come to me and they say, well, I've treated a horse for ulcers. And I say, what did you treat with? And they're telling me about a supplement they've used. Well, research shows that doesn't heal ulcers. And I don't want to talk too much about ulcers in general because that's its own episode.
Right.
But there is this product by Doc Lane's in Lexington that they can compound it in 3 different forms, and hopefully your veterinarian would be open to prescribing a compounded product to allow you to address ulcers in your horse. So we've liked it. I think we've probably treated 12 horses with it so far, and good results. Very clearly, for us, the product works. So I've liked that. And what I do also like, great customer service, talking to them. They're very easy to work with. And our vet is able to communicate with them very easily, and they ship directly to our fosters. So
that part's really nice. I was getting tired of running to the post office.
And Suzanna was able to log on and do the order from online and just get the fosters who needed the product mailed out. And so for us, that was very convenient. That wouldn't apply to the average horse owner, but it was great for us. Next, we have our adoptable horse of the month, and I decided Anthem was a good option. I would like to see him adopt before Equine Affaire.
Me too. Because
I would like to be able to take Kiara in that spot. Yeah. And Anthem is super adoptable. So Suzanna, actually, he was born here.
Not on this property, but here in Munfordville, yeah.
Yes.
He was selenium deficient.
And he was born to Dandelion.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the ATFO in 2022. Her adoption fee was $14,000.
Yeah.
She's been featured in the U.S. Dressage magazine and on their website because the adopter does dressage, and they did this really lengthy, kind of fantastic article about her.
Nicely done.
And so here, his dam is out there doing big things as a little adopted Appalachian Brumby.
Yeah, and Zazu was his dad.
And Zazu, who did, Randy McStutes won the ATFO in 2020. And if you visited the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off page, you'll see a lot of times we'll use as the cover photo Zazu bridleless jumping over something, hay bales or fire or something with
His
Randy.
performance was the one that made everybody cry.
It was beautiful. So this little horse, he's not even 4 years old yet.
He will be on July 5th.
He has, thus his name, Anthem. But we'll talk about the name because he can be registered with like the U.S. Pinto Association.
Yes, and somebody donated that the other day. So this week I'm going to be doing the paperwork for that.
And they're thinking of a name. So what names are in the running?
You know
I'm
what?
not involved in this.
I can't remember what it was again. It's a line from the Star Spangled Banner. Twilight's Last Gleaming is the one that we hope gets picked.
There was another one that I liked better with Anthem in the name.
The other one was, you said an inspiring anthem because he's not
derpy.
a speedy fellow.
He's so like laissez-faire. Hey, I said uninspiring anthem, and she's like, "That's mean," and it was mean, but I meant it.
He's very sweet and very laid back, and nothing really bothers him much at all.
Well, and this little comment about him, several trainers at the rescue that didn't know his history, they messed with him, and they were like, "He seems so shut down," and
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, that's who he is. He is so uninterested in dramatics.
He's not drama. He's unlike his brother, who looks exactly like him, but is
totally different
nothing like him
personality.
in personality.
So this guy, honestly, if you didn't know him, maybe you would think that, but he just has always been just derpy. Da, 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 da. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
But he is. The term bomb-proof is not accurate for any horse. But
No.
if there was something dialed back from that,
But if we think about it, though, Bunny's his half sibling, and she was very laid back too.
I don't know
Not
if she
quite
was
as laid back as that one, but still,
He's almost asleep when he's awake. But what I'm telling you about that stuff is he would be such a wonderful, safe beginner with trainer type of guy because his nature is good and non-reactive and quiet.
Gated, though.
He is gated.
Yeah,
right now, I've seen him gate nicely. I can't tell you the name of the gate. I'd have to get Carl Bledsoe involved in that. But he was. But now they're seeing some pacing, so it just needs some work on the gate. But I think with the right trainer, you could easily get him there, and he would be a nice, smooth, small little guy. I mean, he's 13.2.
He's a Palomino Pinto with a really nifty white lightning bolt on his left butt cheek.
Kind of got a charming face. It's
He's got a big wide blaze.
It's in his head's. I don't know. His head's very kind of. I don't know. It's charming. It's masculine. It's
He's
very
adorable.
cute. He's adorable. So I thought he would. His adopter passed away unexpectedly. It was very sad.
Oh, that was so sad.
She was otherwise had been a healthy woman, I think in her 50s.
And thank goodness he was branded because the family didn't know what to do with him.
And because we're going to talk about freeze branding next in our Ding-a-ling of the month portion, explain what happened with the freeze brand and why it was so important that he had that.
Yeah, so the lady passed away unexpectedly, and I don't know if she left instructions for her horses, and maybe they haven't found them yet. Obviously, the family was reeling, but they were not horse people at all, didn't know what in the world to do with these horses. And they called up, I can't even remember who, somebody in Ohio, who they realized that those two horses had come from them because one of the patrons of the barn had mentioned it and said, well, will you just take all of them? And when the people in Ohio saw the pictures, they're like, that's a Heart P. We can't take that horse. Y'all need to call Heart of Phoenix. And the family member was like, who is Heart of Phoenix? And whoever it was in Ohio was like, here, let me pull up the number for you. And then I got a phone call.
Well, and that is not the first time that's happened.
No.
But
it's the second.
Like the walk away, from that is, make sure if you have horses, your family knows what you want to happen with those. It doesn't mean it's an adopted horse, but family after the fact don't think about our horses the way we would, and not meaning to, really bad things could happen because I've seen a lot of family members after the fact and they scramble and just the first trailer that pulls in often is who takes the horses, and the first trailer that pulls in usually isn't a good place. Yeah. So really think about that.
In this case, he would have, sounds like, gone to a good place.
Well, they were honest enough to mention, hey, that's a Heart of Phoenix horse. So that was fortunate. But if he had not had that brand, there would have been no way to know. We would have checked in with that adopter. Nobody would have been able to answer her phone, check the email. We wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And it would have been a long, drawn-out process to eventually come to find out she had passed away and he was long since gone. And so even though we check in, monthly for the first year and yearly after. So much can change even in 1 month. And in 1 month, somebody could pass away, the horse could be given away, and could be not able to be located. So that brand is the difference in us being able to go up toward Philadelphia and get him back. And so that's why he's back with us through no fault of his own. So look him up. You can go to wvhorserescue.org /adopt, and then you can click adoptable horses and you'll see Anthem there. Again, I would love to see him get adopted because that would open up a spot at Equine Affaire for another young horse. But I think he's more marketable, so we are just kind of picking what are we most apt to see adopted during that time. Then moving on to Ding-a-ling of the month. This person wanted featured.
Yeah, they did.
They did. I don't remember the name.
Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. But I think it started on the Freeze branding post. I think this person started having a rant on the Freeze brand post and wasn't satisfied, and then was insatiable about just harassing the page. But what was the next? Where did she go from there?
Gosh, what was it that she hopped to next? I can't even remember what she hopped to.
It's a ding-a-ling and we can't even remember what she did.
But she hopped to like 3 or 4 of them, so I just don't even know.
What was one of them where she wrote, I guess, the HYPP.
Oh, yeah. How dare I not know that HYPP horses have trouble with anesthesia a lot of times?
No, and
Which is what we learned at the University of Georgia.
Well, and I'm sure in the quarter horse world, most all people know, but we, for one, rarely get quarter horses.
And get little tiny little gated things.
Yeah, we just don't get those. And the one that we've had a couple, they had HYPP and PSSM and had to be euthanized because they were in terrible shape. So we just haven't, and it's the reaction they have to anesthesia. Mm-hmm. So we've never had a horse with HYPP under anesthesia. It's just something we hadn't done. So Suzanna put out just hey, PSA, if you didn't know. And
she's like, how could you not know this?
You didn't know this, laughy face?
Yeah.
I guess you all don't know everything. And I wrote something like, not everything, but we're sure close. Anyway, she was hopping from page to page or post to post and just going on, and people were on there just like tearing her up. And finally people were like, please
block her. We're tired of reading her crap.
Yeah, please block this nut. But that HYPP thing, which makes me think about the fact that if you follow the page, it probably does seem like we think we know it all. It's exactly the opposite because of the fact that we recognize how much there is to learn. We know how important it is to share what we do know. There is, if we, in 10 years from now, we would be like, I can't believe I didn't, we're constantly having those conversations because I think we both take it very seriously that education about horse care makes us be less needed as a rescue.
Right.
So.
Well, and I fatally founded a mare over acorns one time from the simple fact that no one ever told me. So I tend to mention it a lot on the page because it caused her to have such a bad laminitic attack that her coffin bones came through the bottom of her feet and I had to euthanize her. And I had no idea that acorns would do that. I put her in a round pen full of them while I cleaned her paddock. And it was a fatal error. So
I mean, it's that sort of thing. You don't ever take for granted the knowledge you have as something everyone else has. The odds are great that a large number of people don't know. And it doesn't matter what that don't know is. For instance, when I just came in, we were getting ready to record this. Morgan, who just headed out on a trail ride when we came in, she was graciously letting us use her house. She has a bottle lamb, and she had messaged me and said, hey, this lamb someone has given me is scouring really, really bad. They had the lamb on milk replacer. And I said, make sure you get the lamb off milk replacer. That will kill the lamb. Get the lamb on whole milk. The number of times I've shared that in my personal life and my personal farm page, and the number of goat kids and lambs that have been saved is probably in the tens of thousands. If I just took for granted, well, everyone knows that, what would happen to all these 4-H kids that are getting these bottle lambs this time of year, or bottle kids, and they don't know, and breeders that don't have enough information themselves that are killing half of their kid crop or goat, it's very sad. So if you have information that experience has taught you, share that information. And if people don't want the information, good for them. But a lot of people are going to be glad to hear it. And you may save the life of an animal, or in sometimes safety-wise of a person doing something very dangerous with a horse.
Right.
I've seen, I'll say we've all seen it, but that's not even, it's not, people walking with lead ropes like around like the shoulder, not thinking about the horse could take off and that rope could wrap around. And I read a story once about that, a woman doing that and it decapitated her. Well, I never forgot that story. But I mean, it really is important to share the information that you have.
We're really good at that.
We are. And I know, we do know. We know a lot, but not nearly at all.
She said on the way down to Georgia, I bet people get tired of hearing us talk all the time. They want to tell us to shut up, you-know-it-alls.
I know that they do. Like, I know some of y'all do. And that's fine. Some of y'all don't. And honestly, even those that want us to hush, they have heard some things and been like, well, I want to put that in a little memory.
Well, the funny thing about the Ding-a-ling, was she knows so much about us that she knows we do a Ding-a-ling of the month, and she said, I bet I'll be the topic of your next conversation on your podcast.
And I thought, can you imagine being a person that is so obsessed with people that you listen to their podcast to then come back and taunt them. Yeah. But I mean, so thank you. That's a view.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
views on our, our analytics reflect that. So yay.
Yay.
This main topic, this episode that I wanted to circle back to what we talked about on the live that we did driving from Georgia, because the lives don't get quite the circulation, and I think they even are deleted automatically after like 30 days, which wrapped around into all kinds of kind of negative comments that were happening on the groundwork video that you shared of Nelson. And then it was also kind of wrapped into the freeze branding conversation, which was the essence of what people were saying is you should never cause your horse discomfort, and you should never cause your horse to be uncomfortable, and you should never cause stress to your horse. Yeah. And I was really glad that when we attended that certification there at the University of Georgia, that was talked about, that you have to, a horse has to be able to think through and be safe during times of stress.
Right.
In the natural world, horses are stressed.
Yes.
They stress each other out, and their reaction to stress and discomfort, and you knowing what that reaction is going to be, can keep you safe. But it's also that they need to be able to think through it. And this person's comment on the groundwork was essentially that at no point groundwork should ever kind of stress the horse.
Right. Yeah. Even if it takes 2 years, she said.
And I thought, what a dangerous thing to say. Groundwork's being done to get the horse to the point that it's more handleable, more able to communicate with the person, safer for everyone. You don't take 2 years to get a horse handleable.
Well, just think about who would have died if we'd have taken 2 years to get that horse handleable, because we couldn't have taken in other ones because he was filling up the space. Well,
but also think about what happens to their feet. Think about what happens to their...
Look at Zeta's feet.
Well, exactly. And think about what happens dental-wise.
Right.
Think about the vaccines that they may have needed, or the exposures they're having, especially with some of the epidemics we're seeing in the country.
PHV1 neurologic, which vaccines doesn't entirely cover.
What if there's a natural disaster and you can't get the horse on the trailer?
Which is what they were talking about in Georgia.
Yeah, so there was a vet who shared that during the wildfires in San Diego, her 18-hand warm blood would not load on the semi when it came in at the final evacuation point, and she had to leave her horse in the fire area, just turn it out, and she had to leave because the horse would not load on the trailer. Now, maybe that horse, here's the important part of that. Maybe that horse in times where they really weren't super stressed would load, but during a time of extreme stress, the horse was not able to get itself together and do what was necessary to keep itself safe and get on that trailer. So,
but 2 years later, it would have.
Yeah, 2 years later.
They should have just kept the semi there for 2 years.
For 2 years. And so, you know, it's not about rushing things, but it is about quality of life and like be sensible. Discomfort is part of the lives of humans. It's part of the lives of small animals. It's part of the lives of large animals. And everything that's wild or domestic, stress and discomfort. When you give a horse a vaccine, it is not comfortable. When you give a horse a large injection of Exceed or penicillin, it is not comfortable. I would argue that's actually painful. When you sedate a horse to have teeth done, when that horse comes out of the sedation, especially if the mouth has been very neglected, it's not comfortable.
Not comfortable.
You can watch them eat after some dramatic dental work, and you know there's some discomfort. Now, I know there'll be somebody, well, then your vet took off too much. Sometimes changing that whole angle of the mouth will just make the horse uncomfortable.
The jaws will ache.
The jaws will ache, and I've observed that.
Because the muscles have adapted to the mess.
During that certification we received during the instruction, they talked about measuring the heart rate and the respiratory rate of horses in trailers, and horses always have elevated rates because it's stressful. It's not just the first time they're in a trailer. When a horse is trailered, it is stressed. Yeah. So if you're saying no stress during training, then you can't trailer your horse anywhere. Well, frankly, you're never going to be able to train it to even get on the trailer, so you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
You know, there's a kind way to do something, but that doesn't mean it's stress-free. Stress-free and kind, they're not interchangeable terms. They're absolutely not. You can do things kind, and there can be some stress involved, but it's sensible, and it is necessary. You see that thing circulate about dogs, and you foster a lot of dogs, and it would make more sense. I don't foster dogs, and my dogs, have rarely been crated, but it talks about in times of disaster that your dog needs to learn when it's young to be able to be comfortable in a crate.
Right.
Because you never know when you are in a situation where it has to be crated, and it needs to be able to be used to that thing.
Right.
So in order to get them used to the crate, there are times of stress that when puppies, at least in my experience, when I have crated them, they scream and they cry and they hate it. But it is necessary it doesn't mean if you're in a situation where you don't have to crate your dog all the time, great, I don't have to. But honestly, to tell on my own self, every dog I have would have an absolute breakdown if it had to be in a crate, except maybe one.
Maybe
of my
not
old
Mel,
dogs.
because he came in a crate.
Well, I don't know. I think he'd have a hard time. The old puppy mill dog, Opie, would be comfortable in a crate. That's the only one. So even in my instance, I haven't exposed them for short amounts of stress to get them to make it less stressful if something would go really haywire and they would be crated for a long time. So think, I guess, more about it that way. Short amounts of controlled stress ultimately is setting the horse up for a life of less stress overall.
Well, I took in a German foreign exchange student for a year, and that was a fantastic experience. But Buddy, the first week she was there, that was a lot of stress. Like, it was really a lot of stress. Think about if I thought my children should never be stressed. I'd have never taken a foreign exchange student who has become a member of our family. She's going to be in my daughter's wedding party in October. But it was a lot of stress for the first week. I mean, in Germany, apparently, they run around in their underwear in front of their whole family, and we're like, what are you doing?
We do that at my house. No, well, but I think that correlation, 2 kids, when I brought home, my second son, even though my oldest son, all he wanted was a little brother, that baby never shut up. It screamed, Jack. He screamed, 20 hours out of 24 a day.
You should have crated him.
Listen, I'm telling you. That was stress but Christian still talks about it, giving him PTSD.
But he wants kids.
But he wants
a lot
Here's
of them.
the thing. His brothers are the thing, they are the things he loves most in the whole world, and he still wants to have kids. It didn't deter him, but it was a lot of stress. And if anyone has ever made a change in their life, if you move, a different job, going to a new school, adding a family member, whether it's a pet,
buying a new car, that's stressful.
Upping your car payment. There's stress as part of life, and yes, we're humans, but in the animal world, if you watch the herd dynamic, here's the thing. A controlled herd that has the same members in it and things don't change, it's a lower stress environment. So, but you will still see stress during times of feeding. When one horse decides, maybe I am the boss today, there's always a low amount of stress on and off throughout the day and throughout the month and year in a herd. Now, when in the wild, you're always having horses try to leave and join other herds, and you'll see other horses, stallions come in and try to take over. And it's a lot more stress in a wild herd dynamic. So actually, you would in the natural world, the level of stress because of predators and the constant thought of that herd of predators are always looking, to eat us. And there's always a stallion trying to take the herd, and there's always a mare trying to defect and go to a different herd. And I've observed it, on the feral herds and the mine lands. So lots of stress. Don't be only positive interaction and only things that are fantastic and you're only wearing rose-colored glasses. You really hold the horse back, and you're not doing things in a way that is natural.
Sometimes you're harming the horse.
You're absolutely harming them.
What if we took 2 years to get Zeta's hoof fixed?
No, well, I can't. I mean, we would just not. We would not go for that.
Right.
And we often will let idealism, and so at the root of this ideology is idealism. And I think the ASPCA, they actually once quoted me talking about West Virginia and like growing a rescue in West Virginia, and we didn't have the luxury of founding a rescue based on idealism.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, because it allows us to do so much more. And again, so I don't want the message to be it's fine to rush or it's fine to be cruel, none of those. But creating stress as a teaching opportunity is natural. It is not abnormal. It is not harmful. It is not detrimental. And it is absolutely necessary. And if you ascribe to the belief that no stress is your goal, I hope you don't have horses.
We're going to have 2,000 people going back to our Facebook trying to find Nelson's video to see what the heck we did to this poor horse.
Or like, well, let me find all these mean things, it just that sort of thing. I mean, there's a growing trend toward only positive reinforcement. There's a growing trend toward the horse always making the choice.
Animals always making the choice. I mean, right now I have a really stressed out puppy mill cavalier, ex-puppy mill
And
mama.
what if you let her continue to make choices based out of fear and the way she's being kept? Like, what would happen?
I mean, I was telling Tinia the other day, she wouldn't let you get your hands on her. So what I do with those dogs is my bed is in the corner of a room, and I stick a bed in the corner of my bed where they're so scared of me, they won't jump over top of me to get out of that corner, and I make them sleep in that corner all night long. And after like 3 nights, they're like, well, she won't kill me in her sleep anyway. And that's how you start making progress with them.
Whereas if you let her choose to always hide and be away from you,
right?
How long, if ever, would the progress be made, and how many dogs are being euthanized during that time that need this spot? And then even if people don't prioritize that, because there are people that just what they're not seeing, it doesn't matter to them. It does to me, but say it doesn't matter to someone, that's irrelevant. You only want to focus on the animal that you have. The quicker you make progress, the better off the animal's going to be. And if you avoid all stress, the animal's not learning to cope and work through and see at the end of that activity, it's okay. And they do have the ability to figure that out.
Well,
they do.
My favorite stressed horse story, and just the thought of this is so wild, and I publish this at least once a year, is the person who had a horse that was terrified of the wheelbarrow. And they went to such crazy lengths to keep this horse from ever seeing or hearing a wheelbarrow. Like insane lengths to keep the horse from seeing or hearing a wheelbarrow. And not only did they do that for themselves, but when they would go on vacation, they would insist that the barn sitters go through this crazy wild routine of going way around the barn so it never passed the horse's stall. All this crazy stuff. So the horse was terrified of wheelbarrows for years. And it would have taken an hour to get the horse out of it, and it had been eating hay out of the wheelbarrow. It was ridiculous.
Well, and that comes back to an article I've done, and I think you've talked a lot about it, and the way I would lead into that, this other vein is, remember when we got Coda, and Coda had been a feral Morgan stallion somewhere up in New England, and when he was gathered, the people, they were scared of him. and the handler would brush him by what taping a brush?
Yeah, taping a brush to
a stick. And then brushing him at an arm, her arm out plus the stick, and then try to brush him.
Which is a great way to start, by the way.
But they stayed that way for a large amount of time. And the trainer who ultimately accepted him, and the trainer who ultimately is still his home, felt that played a lot into the fears that he had. And the reason things like that cause so much harm is you are essentially, your body language and what the way you're breathing, the way you're handling them tells them you're on guard, you're worried. So they got to be worried.
There's got to be a lion somewhere.
Where's the lion? If you're not handling the horse confidently
or at least fake confidently.
Yeah, and they kind of know when you're faking it, but fake it anyway. That's still better than being blatantly terrified. But or find someone who can.
Right.
Because you really cement in a horse, there's a reason to be scared. There's a reason.
Of that particular process.
Of whatever it is. You're tiptoeing around it. And I talked in an article about just how much that the horse is playing off you. And then Suzanna did one, a kind of similar thing. Maybe that had the wheelbarrow thing about the lions.
Don't be a lion.
Don't be a lion. So you can find those articles, on heartoffphoenix.org and on the Facebook page. But I think that's why part of why, it's not the only reason why, but it's part of why when you get a confident horse person, say somebody brings a horse to us and they describe all these things this horse does, and we call Nelson Detweiler, who we have relied on to correct many a troubled horse or a problem horse or whatever, feral, whatever the issue is, he fixes it.
He's a wizard.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Why does Nelson often not see those things? He handles the horse and he'll say, I'm not seeing A, B, C, D. I can kind of see E, F, and G. It's because the confidence in which he is handling the horse and the way in which he's handling the horse immediately does away with a portion of what the person was seeing, which tells you the person created that issue. So that does go back to that whole concept of, if you're afraid to stress the horse, you really could be creating, in some ways, you could be creating stress that's unnecessary, that's not effectual. It's non-effectual stress. Right. You're not getting anywhere with that stress. So I just, there's a time and a place. We've certainly had horses make beautiful progress with kind of a positive reinforcement approach. We've had horses make really beautiful progress with a liberty approach, and we have lots of horses that make great progress without those approaches and really would not thrive or do well. And we have horses that needed that at first, and then they move past that, and then they need a more traditional approach. And so just don't be so married to a doctrine that you won't see the forest for the trees. And we just run into that a lot. And I think part of that, the ability of us to kind of look outside and say, what does this specific horse needs, is maybe because we know so many trainers that do everything differently.
Right.
And we'll say, well, let me think of a horse. Well, I think
I'd like to sing Cabrina to Kaylee Eves. She doesn't have room for her, but I'd like to sing Cabrina to Kaylee Eves, because what Kaylee does would be wonderful for her. Yeah,
I think so. Kaylee Eves is a good example of, like, having watched her with Tamira specifically. Money she accepted, but he was a real straightforward horse. Would have done well in any really solid program with many different approaches. But Tamira does not. No. And does not do well in most typical training barns, and would not. And Kaylee, I think, appears to really want to unpack the baggage and understand the why and give the horse the time. And that's the thing. We're not anti-giving a horse time. Gosh knows we've had Jaina for 3 years in different settings. But I want very much for each horse to get the opportunity it needs. So if it, sometimes that takes time to figure out, what does this horse need? And if we were married to one kind of doctrine and only this type,
we'd be running the dead wagon a lot.
Well, it would be some kind of tragedy.
Some kind of hoarding facility of half feral horses or something.
It would be tragedy after tragedy, and the horses would get no good outcomes. They wouldn't end up in homes. But with watching the trainer with Tamira, there is, there are horses that come to mind that we have right now. I think that would really thrive in that. Potentially Ziti, and Cabrina, and maybe Molasses. That one I'm 50-50 on. But knowing enough trainers that you have it is a luxury. It's a luxury to know enough trainers to be able to think that way.
But it was a hard-won luxury, too. I mean,
yeah, we've...
It didn't just magically fall in our laps because somebody sprinkled some fairy dust.
No, I mean, I think being open to understanding that there's not just one approach and looking for trainers that have a kind of a varied background. Coming back, thinking of Armani, when Armani was rounded up and the original person who picked him up, he was beyond the scope of that person and even where he was being held. And when I picked Patrick Sullivan, I wasn't positive, but I felt it was the best shot, that a really strong, very well done Liberty start, because Liberty can really go awry, but done well, it could save his life, and it did in his instance. Yes. It saved his life. So, and now he's ridden bridleless as in a child's lesson program with a lot of Liberty components, but it doesn't appear to be strictly a Liberty program, but that really saved his life. So it just depends. Be willing to consider your approach isn't working. Don't ever, if you're not seeing massive progress, probably you need to change what you're doing.
Or, massive progress, steady progress.
Yeah, well,
not molasses progress.
Well, so when I say massive, I really mean for that specific horse. Big wins can be little tiny wins.
Yes.
I could see, for instance, when I say massive, I'm taking into context like the background of the horse. So Jaina, them squirting the omeprazole in Jaina's mouth on the video. If you all don't know the background of Jaina, we've had 3 years in this horse. She's been to Patrick Sullivan in Texas. She's been to Gary Yeager down in Florida, and now she's with Labyrinth Training Facility in Virginia, and just trying to see what's going to work. And here's the thing, like, she's picked up and improved with each thing. There's been, or at least we've realized what won't work. So, Patrick Sullivan got her much safer on the ground, but riding simply wasn't going to be part of what was going to happen there. And then we established with the next trainer that she was not going to be a safe driving horse. Now, in this new situation, for me, when I think massive progress, it was that somebody is standing in front of that horse who has been very aggressive and very aggressive with her feet and her mouth, just squirting a whole tube of omeprazole in there. And she's almost like into it. She's like, well, this is delicious. So that doesn't sound like a big win.
Put some molasses in it.
I bet they did.
They did.
But that to me is a massive win. So just massive win for what you're doing, but steady progress is if you're still doing the same thing you were doing last month, in most instances, that means what you're doing needs reevaluated. So be willing to do that. And I think then that's how horses win. And when it applies to kids, there's no one size fits all. So That's it. That's all I've got. I think we are next month. I don't know. I'll probably do a podcast from Equine Affaire. I don't know if I'll be able to catch up with Suzanna, but I hope so. It's a busy, wild month next month. And at the very end of it, at the very end of it, we'll be doing the ATFO pickup on April 30th?
30th, yes.
Yeah, April 30th. So it's that time of year again. It's wild.
It can get wild.
It's wild. So, all right, guys, that's it for their third episode, and we'll talk at you next time.
Talk at you.
I'm Tinia.
I'm Suzanna.
And that's Horses of Courses.